In this lesson for our Seven Nation Army house track, Task 1C, we're going to look at a really important part of house music. Now, every single track that I've heard of that fits the requirement for this particular brief has these vocal chomps. Now, my first reference piece was this Pump Up the Volume, and there was vocal chomps all the way through it, and for a beginner, it's quite a difficult part to incorporate. So I'm going to kind of take this a bit slow and just kind of show you the process that I've done to add the vocal chomps. Now, one thing you need to remember about the brief is that you are not allowed continuous audio, okay? So your vocal chomps have to be sporadic. They have to be done as samples. They're not allowed to just kind of run a whole bunch of vocals off, okay? So no singing the whole phrases out or anything like that. They have to be these vocal chomps. Otherwise you will not meet the requirements of the brief. So with that being said, I've created my vocal samples here. Now this is the process that I've used to kind of get this working. So bear with me while I just kind of show you what's going on here. And I'll just zoom in and we'll have a little look at how to kind of do these vocal chomps. Now, what I've done is I've gone into the Seven Nation Army and I've said to myself, okay, the vocal chomps have to be part of the Seven Nation Army. So I've looked at Seven Nation Army and I've looked at some of the phrasing that he's using in his voices, and I've just taken single words out, or single kind of 2 or 3 words out, just to kind of use this idea. So here they are. So here's the words that I'm using for my sampler.
Fight 'em off, can't forget, back and forth, leave it alone, Queen of England, hounds of hell, in my bones, I'm going to Wichita.
Now, it doesn't matter that my vocal is completely naff here, because we're going to really mangle this up, and that's the idea with the vocal chomp, is that you do get completely mangled. Now, one thing that you do have to make sure you do is make sure that the vocals are in tune, okay? So one thing you can do is come down to this flex pitch and actually just tune them all up. So make sure you kind of fine tune them. So you got this here, so you can just kind of get them onto the note, okay, and go through that. I've already gone through this, but I've literally just gone through all the phrasing and just made sure that all the pitches are absolutely perfect. The next thing is to work out what each trigger in your sampler is going to say. So zoom right in, we can get rid of this bit. Zoom right in and find the samples. Now, it's really up to you how you do your phrasing. Come up to the scissor tool and just listen to your phrasing. So listen to the first one.
Fight 'em off.
And I quite like that. You could have fight and then them off as 2 different samples if you wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it fight 'em off as just one sample. Let's have a look at this next one. We'll zoom in a bit more just so we get the cuts.
Can't forget, can't forget.
Can't forget. So let's cut this one up. So for this one, we're going to say, okay, we're going to cut it here. Now, you have to get it as close to the beginning of the sample as possible. Otherwise, when you put it into your sampler, you're going to miss out the beginning. It's going to take a little bit of time for it to roll into the beginning of the note, okay? So if you need to zoom in more and kind of analyze these a bit closer, just do that. Zoom right in, make sure you are. Now, you can see I've cut off a bit here, so let's make sure that's not an important part of the sample.
Can't forget,
So as it's,
can't forget.
so it is quite an important part. So Control Z, and let's bring our playhead to there, and let's do let's just change it off a beat and put it onto ticks. There we go, that's better.
Can't forget,
Okay, so we'll have can't as 1, and let's have forget as 1 as well. So we got this one,
can't
and we got this one.
forget.
Okay, and we can do that all the way through. Now the next thing you want to do after you've cut up all of your samples is you're going to want to load them into your sample player. I've already done this, so first mission, cut them all up, get rid of all the silences. You do not need the silences, okay? I'm going to mute this track. The reason I've kept this track, I don't really need it, but the reason I've kept it is just in case I want to do any changes, okay? And it's going to be really easy for me to cut something else up or change something there and then drag it into my sampler. Now here's my sampler track. So I've just created an instrument track using the EXS24. And here it is. Now you have this edit button. Click on the edit button, and with your samples already cut up, grab them and drag them on, okay? Once you drop it, it will be there. I'm not going to drop that because I've already got that one, so I don't want to do that. Control Z. All of my samples are cut up. So now if you look, when it comes in, it gives you 3 options. I've used the contiguous option, okay? But you can use whichever one you want. If you want to change the pitch of your audio, you can use that one. But the contiguous just gives you one note. Let me just play it on my keyboard. So here's the first one. Fa and Marv. Next one. And this one's back and forth. But I put back and forth on 3 notes. So it goes back and... Okay, so that's quite nice. That's quite a nice one to do. Next one I've got... Now I could have cut those top a bit more. I probably will actually. So over 2 notes. Okay, so that's quite nice. So I've mapped all these out. And what you're going to notice is the key that the pitch is at and the highest and low range. You can change these ones. So the lowest range of my pitch is a C1. The highest range is a C1. Just giving me 1. If I wanted that to be an octave higher, I could change that to a C2, for instance. And that would give me a whole octave. So you can see that that's giving me a whole octave. Let's do it from the other end, actually. Let's undo that one so I can play this. Otherwise, that's not going to trigger properly. So let's do it from this end. So let's go B2 on this one. Okay, so if we change it to B2, you can now see that Wichita is now over all of these notes, and you'll hear the pitch gradually get higher. And that's quite a nice effect in itself, so you can do that. The other thing that I've done on this particular one is I've turned one shot off. When they import, they all import as one shot. Now what one shot does is it makes the sample play all the way through, even if you're not touching the note. So if I press the note here now, so let's go to my note, and I let go, and it doesn't show it, but I let go really early, and you can hear it plays the whole sample. You can't. Okay, so it's a different effect. I've turned one shot off because I didn't want that. Another thing you can do out of the box is reverse. This is quite an interesting one. Okay, so that's quite a nice one if you want to add a reverse effect. And the idea with these vocal chomps is just to chop them up and mash them up as much as possible, okay? So I've mapped all these out. So the key note that they're all playing are the notes that they're on. So that was something simple. So if you wanted to make them more than one note, you can do that. But that's pretty much how I've set that up. Cut them up here, drag them into here, job done, and then just save it. The saving convention, and let me just go save as. The saving convention is, I think it's slightly different for Logic 9, but in Logic 10, you have to put it in your music folder, your audio music apps, and then your sampler instrument, and save them into here. Once you save them into here, they'll be available for all of your projects, okay? So when you close that, you'll get that message, do you want to save this? I do not want to save that. Or do I? Yes, I do want to save it, actually. Quite like that. I might use that. Okay, as far as this goes, I've then started tweaking with the overall envelope. So once again, it's all about mashing the sound up. So the first thing I've done is come into the cutoff. I've turned the cutoff on because the factory default, you don't have the filter section on. So you turn this on, and I've just come in, I've just started messing around with it. And because my voice was quite low, let me just play that again so you can hear what it sounded like originally. So here it is.
Back and forth, leave it alone.
Okay, so I've brightened up the texture of these vocals quite heavily, okay? I've also come into here and added some envelope, so it slides onto the note a little bit more, okay? And that's pretty much all I've done here. Just messed around with this envelope, turned on the filter section, played around with the resonance and the offcut. Okay, the next thing is I've actually just applied loads and loads of different effects. I've applied a phaser, Let me just show you the settings for this. So I've gone into a preset phaser filter 1, which is quite nice. I've added some delay, and I've just created my own delay here because I just want something very subtle. Now, one thing you'll notice is I've not put them as buses this time. I only want to use these effects for this particular instrument, so I've put them all as inserts, okay? So they're only available for this. So I've had to mess around with the wet dry mix to make sure it doesn't take over my sound completely. Add a bit of EQ. Now the EQ is quite important to this because I wanted to narrow the frequency range. I don't want my boomy notes and I don't want my high notes, so I've really narrowed those frequency ranges and I've let the resonance do the rest, okay, and the filter of the actual instrument do the rest. I've added some chorus, so here's my settings, just mild settings here. Once again, I've had to deal with the wet dry mix just to make sure the chorus doesn't take over the whole thing. I've added an auto filter that allows it to kind of bounce all over the place and kind of bounce on the left speaker and the right speaker, which is quite nice. And then finally I've added this limiter to kind of make sure I maximise the thing. I could have added a bit crusher, I could have added loads and loads of other things, okay? And then I've also added my reverb, my standard reverb across the whole thing, okay? Space Designer. Just add a little bit of that. I could add a bit more if I wanted to. Let me just show you what I've got so far. So if I play these notes now, you'll hear a massive difference. And if I want a bit more reverb, if I want to change any of these parameters, I can. Okay, so I don't want that much reverb, but that's what I've got so far. So that's how I've set up my instrument. Fairly straightforward, fairly simple. At the moment, I've only used it very lightly. I'm just trying it all out and I'm just using it very lightly. I had this really nice phrase that said, Wichita, I'm gonna Wichita, that I quite liked. So I wanted to put that in the beginning. Let me just show you where this is so far. So I'm probably going to fill out most of this track with these little sample loops, these mangled secs, because I want them to be quite percussive as well. Something that I've done up here is just kind of got this kind of ga 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 ga, and it adds to the rhythm as well, which is quite nice. So let me play what I've got on its own, and then I'll play it to you as per my track, okay? And this is quite nice. It adds a bit of delay to it as well, where the velocity just gets quieter, and then it punches back in with a heavy bit of velocity. Wichita. Okay, so that's quite nice. One thing I should also say is I actually played all of this in live. Because of the way samples work, it's just easier to play it in live and then just tweak it afterwards. Trying to get samples done by input via pencil, it's quite a difficult process. So playing it in on the keyboard is just such an easier way of doing it, okay? So here it is. I'll play the whole thing up to here, just so you can hear how it sounds. Actually, let me just play this bit on its own because you can't hear it heavily in the mix at the moment. And this is what I was saying to you about, I just wanted to make it a bit more percussive. Listen to how percussive that sounds. And that sounds really nice. You wouldn't even know that that was a vocal. It's so percussive. So here we go. Here it is in the mix. See what you think so far. Okay, so you can hear that. It's just the start of something there. I'm going to do a lot more with that, but I really didn't want to influence you guys too much. You should definitely have these vocal chomps. Choose your words wisely from the actual song that you're working with, and get those parts in. It's such a big part of house music, and it will give you so much to write about in your logbook. So get that done. In the next lesson, then we're going to start looking at the mixing stage. We've got 2 more lessons left, the mixing and the mastering section. So spend a bit of time getting these vocals down, spend a bit of time getting all your other instruments down and getting your arrangement exactly the way you want it to. And then we'll just briefly cover how you should look at mixing this and kind of some of the techniques you can use.